Oh, there it is. Oh, there it is. Okay. Sounds kind of tinny though. All right. Away from that. I will stay clear of the speaker.
You can hit the mobile and the.
Frame myself properly. Okay. Are we feeding? We're not feeding back as much now, right?
We want to just turn it down a little bit.
Turn it down. Okay. Is that a little bit better? Or is that off now?
That's off. That's off.
Is that off? Okay.
Yeah.
There we go. Yeah. That doesn't seem to be a middle ground here. Okay, one more. Okay. Maybe some repositioning will help. We'll try this, and I'll just make sure I'm like away from the mic when I talk. All right. Okay. Can everyone hear me? Can everyone hear me and not lose their hearing? That's good too. Kind of. Okay. I'll do it this way. Okay, that'll work. All right. Thank you for attending. This is my first time out, so please forgive me. I'm going to try to go really fast today, though, a little bit because, yep.
Hold that further away.
Further away?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I am going to try to be a little bit speedy today to keep us on task because we want to dedicate about a half an hour to the Q&A with Lisa. We had to reorient our schedule a little bit. That's the first thing I wanted to mention because Lisa has to get to a meeting elsewhere on campus, so we're going to actually have her run the Q&A in the middle of the agenda today instead. And we're going to push back the official announcements from other steering members toward the end. So just wanted to alert you to that. So first of all, I should introduce myself. I'm Dave Bloom. I work at Steenbach Library, and I'm the new convener for Librarians Assembly Steering. And I also wanted to mention the new roles for all of the other members on Librarians Assembly Steering at the moment. Ann Glorioso from Steenbach is the new secretary. Pamela O'Donnell from College is the treasurer. Beth Harper from Memorial is programs and awards, as is Annie Glassell from Memorial LTG, and she's also taking care of the Librarians Assembly website. Heather Shimon from Steenbach is head of professional concerns and our capacity representative, and we are now short a member because Paloma is leaving us to go to New York Public Library. So that's something we'll be discussing later in a call. I also wanted to mention today that there will be no ASA update today because the first ASA meeting has been postponed for the year, so that actually hasn't happened yet. And in our next meeting, we'll have ASA updates. But I did want to mention Deb Shapiro is the ASAC representative. So did you want to say anything?
No, just a reminder that ASA is Academic Staff Assembly, the governance group for all of us academic staff, including librarians, and ASEC is the Academic Staff Executive Committee. So we're the equivalent of the Librarians Assembly Steering Committee for the academic staff.
Thanks, Deb. Does anyone else have any announcements they'd like to make known going in here? No? Okay. With that, are there any new staff or people who are attending Librarians Assembly Steering for the first time? If so, would you mind standing up and introducing yourself?
Hi. There's a camera. Yeah. So I'm Ms. Carter. I'm the new Vice Provost for Libraries.
I'm new to the meeting, but I've been here for a while. I'm Pete Cole. I read the undergrad position.
Sort of new to the meeting. I've been at a couple of other meetings, but I'm Katie Marr. I'm running Sunday. Thank you, sorry. I'm Karen Godfrey, I'm an ERM librarian. I think I've been background.
Anyone else?
Michaela Sullivan, founder of Evelyn Library, Rare Books and Special Collections, and I don't know if there was a representative from Evelyn administration, but none.
Okay, and now I'm gonna, are there any new staff members? Or people who hadn't been here before? Okay, if not, I'm gonna pass it off to Nancy Graff-Schultz now, who's going to give us an HR update.
Believe me, I can do without the mic. I'm good.
Well, for broadcasting.
Oh,
Yeah, we want to make sure that.
I didn't realize we were broadcasting.
Yeah.
Okay, can you all hear me all right? Excellent. I'm going to be brief today. I just want to remind everyone that the total title compensation study is still going on. We tend to refer to it as TTC for short. Things are going to pick up this fall. We are currently still working on writing job standards, and at some point this fall we will invite employees to help vet those standards. Campus is kind of laying the groundwork for how they want this to happen, and we will follow campus's groundwork, but we absolutely know how much the library staff wants to get involved, and we will fight for that opportunity the best that we can with campus. And ask that I remind all of you that performance reviews are now to be done online, and we are sitting in the middle of September. So if you as a supervisor or you as an employee have not received either a annual performance evaluation or a midterm check-in this year, something's not working right, and we need to get on that, because we're in September. You should have received one or the other already this year. So as an employee, check in with your supervisor. As a supervisor, please do the mental checklist, and if you're not sure, you can always check in with Anne as to what the dates are and when your next ones are due. As we move through the round of doing performance evaluations online, this will become an electronic reminder to you, but until we get through a full year of it, the system will not be informed enough to let you know when those are due. So that'll be coming up as the system gets smarter as we move forward. I'm sure you all saw the Title IX and my clarification, so thank you for taking the 15 minutes to do that training. That's very beneficial to our staff and our students. Any questions for me? Yes.
Are you planning on any kind of informational sessions or trainings related to the new online system for performance review?
So the question was, are we considering any new trainings for the online performance system? We have had some in the past. I will say if there is a demand for additional trainings, we just need to let Anne know and she can coordinate those. I will take a note of that too and ask Anne to get some feedback whether more are needed. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Mine is generally passed around. Next, Michael Cohen is going to present on the University Library Committee.
The University Library Committee had its first meeting of the semester yesterday. Sabina Gross from the German department is continuing as the chair. For this semester, they'll be meeting the second Tuesday of every month, and a reminder that these are open meetings that anyone can attend who wants to. The October 9th meeting will probably be at the TCBC, but that's not been pinned down yet. Yesterday's meeting was sort of introductory and get everyone on board. So Carrie Cruz gave an update on the library facilities master plan. Leslie Moyo gave an update on library consolidation. Lisa gave an update on what she's learned in her first 6 weeks here. And to paraphrase what I think I heard you say was that we have great libraries, we have great library staff, we don't do as great a job of communicating that to the larger campus as we could be or should be. The agenda for the October meeting will focus on an update of where the library is on our strategic plan. That plan was written in 2015, the 5-year plan, but it's time to take an assessment of where we are with that plan. The other thing we'll be looking at is the collection development plan, and specifically the print management, which the faculty on the ULC were interested in. And in future meetings, they'll discuss other important topics such as our equity and diversity initiatives. That was it.
Next, as I mentioned, in case anyone got here late, we are slightly switching the agenda around, and right now we are going to present the Q&A session with Lisa Carter. So I will hand over one of these mics, the more functional of the two mics probably, to Lisa, and we'll circulate the other one.
I can be like a rock star, right?
Yep.
Can you all hear me okay? So, yes, I'm brand new, but I'm glad to be here. I need a delegate. I need somebody to wave their hand at a half an hour, because I need to leave here by 11:45 to get over to Bascom. Okay, so Ian's going to help me out with that, because I might lose track of time. Because question and answers is going to be fun. So, as Michael was saying, I have been doing sort of a listening tour and introductory tour of campus, meeting with deans and vice provosts and vice chancellors sort of over the fall. So I've only met a few of them, got some tours of library facilities, but not all of them. So I'm continuing to work my way through all of that. And what I'm hearing, I think you guys wouldn't be surprised at this, is everybody loves the libraries, everybody loves the librarian they know, and they think we do a great job, but sometimes they're not as aware of all the services that the library can provide. And so I think, like every library I've ever known, we can definitely do a better job of advocating for the services that we can provide to campus and the needs. But that's always going to be the case. So I'm looking forward to doing that as I go out and about. I'm hoping to learn enough about the library so that when people ask me, so I heard I can get things delivered to my office, I can say, yes, indeed, and here's what the turnaround time would be, and that sort of thing. So I'm looking forward to gathering information from all of you on that, that I can take forward with me. And then, of course, I'll come away with questions, because they'll ask me questions that I wouldn't have anticipated. And then you will get questions from me about, do we do this? How do we do this? Sort of thing. So I guess what I'll do is I'll open it to question and answers just right off the gate. And if there's anything you want to know, like if I feel like you guys have my background, you've read my CV, perhaps maybe you were at my interview, probably encountered me sometime in the last month and a half. So I thought I'd just go ahead and open it to questions. And if you'd like me to recount any of that, I'm more than happy to take that question. And they're giving me 30 minutes, so I'm happy to fill air, but I'd like to fill air about what you're interested in. Are we also taking questions from the online crowd? No. I was just wondering if I should look at you every once in a while for a flag. Okay, great. Hi,
Susan Bear.
Oh, yeah.
Special Collections.
Great. Yes, that's a reminder. Please introduce yourself and which department you're with, because I have met a lot of people.
Okay. I'm part-time in Special Collections and part-time collection development for English Humanities. So kind of two parts. My question is just want to hear some of your views on the primary role of Special Collections in UW libraries.
Yeah, well, so you guys might know that I have a Special Collections background, Special Collections Learning Studies. And I think that Special Collections are a really essential part of the research library now and in the future. I think that as our libraries are shifting our service models, what we're finding is that more and more faculty would like their students to have hands-on experience with primary sources. More and more faculty are drawing on primary sources in their research. And this behooves us to get things because, primary sources and special collections generally come in without much description. So that behooves us to get the metadata up online and make things available and do a lot of work behind the scenes that allows us to leverage these collections in ways that faculty and students can really appreciate. And I think the challenge is that they don't even know what we have. So finding out that we have something relevant to their research, or finding out that they have something relevant in the class, not only takes us getting metadata up online and information about those collections up online, but sometimes it also takes the librarians, and not just special collections librarians, to know what we have and how it might be useful. Because, so I'm just thinking, because I don't know our special collections all that well, at Ohio State, the John Glenn collection could be used to study U.S.-Chinese relations in the mid-century, right? And political science folks maybe do that because of the John Glenn collection was affiliated with the School of Public Policy, but I'm not sure our international studies faculty and students understood that. So it takes not just the public policy librarian, but also the Asian studies librarian to know that there's useful materials in there. So I guess what I'm saying there is special collections is everybody's opportunity to leverage our collections. And so I hope that here at Wisconsin, we're doing that kind of work, and we'll be doing more of that kind of work. And also I'd say, so I've been really excited because in Madison, there's more use of archival photos as decoration than anywhere else I've ever been. In Kentucky, Lexington, Kentucky was pretty big on this. But like right now, we have archival photos on the walls. I'll walk into a department and there's archival photos on the walls. The only thing I wish is that they were labeled so that newbies like me actually knew what I was looking at. So think about metadata, even as we're decorating our walls. So,
Okay, thank you.
yeah, thank you. I think Michael has it. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yes, I'm Mike Weiner from the Business Library. Mike Weiner from the Business Library. I have a general question. There's a number of vacancies throughout the GLS, and I'm just kind of curious what would be the process and the timeline for getting those vacancies filled.
Great. So we are, we actually just had our first sort of vacancy conversation, and it was setting the stage initial kind of conversation because I'm new, and I haven't been here long enough really for us to all get on the same page around long-term strategy and long-term vision. It's been my expectation, my understanding that in the past, the GLS was working at bringing all positions to the exec table to be discussed. And that's the practice we used yesterday. That's a practice I'm really familiar with. So the idea is that any open positions, any vacancies would come to exec, we discuss them, hopefully previous discussion would have been had between the AUL and the supervisor saying, okay, do we still need this position? If we still need this position, is it the same? Is it different? Has it been reimagined in some way? Is there some new skills that need to be brought to the position? And that all comes to the table at exec. So we've been in a conversation about some sort of immediate needs, but I think you guys probably have a different perspective on what immediate needs are than maybe we discussed at exec. So I guess in terms of timeline and conversation, it's an ongoing conversation. We got started yesterday. We didn't get very far because, I'm new. And I think that we'll sort of get into a better rhythm coming up. I would encourage anybody who's concerned about an open position to please talk to your supervisor, and your supervisor should be talking to their associate university librarian. I'm also, again, I don't know a lot at this point, but I'm happy offline to take questions or hear about positions that are open. That's not an invitation for me to agree to you that I will fill that position, because again, we're taking everything to exec and having that discussion more broadly. So, questions about that? Follow-up questions? Was that sort of answering your question, but not really? One in the back. Oh, in front.
That's right. Okay. Beth Harper, Memorial Library reference / public services, and also government information. I will ask the reference question. What do you see as the role of reference? I think all departments here probably feel a little short-staffed. I have the experience with reference, and we have had a robust chat service in the past, but I know here at Memorial, we're so short-staffed in public services that we can't staff the chat service, and it becomes less reliable, and we're putting a lot of pressure on partners who staff it. And I'm wondering too if we're seeing reference as almost a marketing or communications opportunity, as well as providing the service. The service, of course, is what I care about, but I think that's a new way to look at it, as the reference people are getting the word out about what services we have.
So can I ask you, before you give up the mic, about the partners that you're relying on?
Well, I should say that the chat service primarily is staffed by College Library and Memorial Library. And we've gone through different periods where one library is answering more often. I feel like right now College is taking on the burden, because the reference librarians at Memorial are also staffing our circulation desk. And so we're more often dealing with circulation. We had to cut back our hours at the reference desk. So other libraries have some chat services, but they're not general, they're more specific. So sometimes we are referring people to those individual library chat services.
Okay, great, thanks. So that's what I mean by I'm new and I have a lot to learn yet about who else is doing chat. So reference is in a really interesting transition in our libraries, and I'm thinking like over the long term, which is I think what our experience has been is that we need people to still be visible, we need people to be accessible, but the traffic at the reference desks, the waiting is not quite as, people don't walk up to the reference desk quite as often as they used to. More people are online, more people actually need point of service where they are. So if they're out in the stacks studying, or if they're in their dorm room, or it's 8 o'clock at night, that's when they want service. And to have to go seek out a person, I think, is a model that no longer really holds up. But we do need people to be present and available. I think your point is really well taken on communication and marketing. Sometimes the folks at the service desk, circulation reference, and the people out and about in departments, or even walking around the library with a name tag on, right, are the people that people see. And the friendlier we are, the more helpful we are, the better experience people have in the library. So I think that's a point well taken. I'm really actually glad to hear that chat is so busy. I mean, it sounds like it's pretty well staffed, as much as it can be. But on the other hand, you've got plenty of questions coming into chat, which means that your chat service is pretty well used, which is really great. So I think looking more into the data on that, and Leslie's shared this information with exec as well, that there's a crunch, right, around reference. So I think the other thing that I don't know about here is whether or not we're utilizing student staff, and by student staff I don't just mean high school students, but also like undergraduate students on our desks. I assume we are. But so one of the things about reference is thinking about it as triage. You have somebody available to field the question, and then we refer it off to an expert who has that information or knowledge. And that person may or may not be at the reference desk or nearby the reference desk. They might have to come out from an office, 3 floors away or something like that. So I assume we're doing that here, but
different extents.
Yeah. And the challenge is then we have to train our especially undergraduate students to be able to do a preliminary reference interview really well and have it be a good experience for their peers. But I think too, there's documentation that says that students are more liable to ask someone who looks like them and their proximate, what they're doing, than they are sort of an adult who looks kind of intimidating, sitting there behind desks. So I think that's the other reason to think about having students on our desks as well. So I still think that there's an important place for reference, but it's shifting as a practice. And how we staff desks is really a issue. So lots of places have, and I know you guys know this, and I think this is what's taking place at Steenbach, is the combining of the circulation and reference desk, right? So that there's one service desk, one service point in the facility. Sometimes facilities are too big to do that, but so I'm sure you guys have thought about it, and I've played around with all of those scenarios. Any follow-up questions? Okay, great. And then we have questions about it.
Hi, I'm Tate Meyer. I'm in the Library Technology Group. My question is, could you explain how you think about how, as a library system, we should think about sort of new and emerging areas of librarianship? I'm particularly interested in, especially like data services and supporting research in ways that don't necessarily line up with traditional, reference, collection, support of our collections, use of our collections, that kind of stuff. Where it's research data, what's the relationship when it's fuzzy, whether we should take responsibility, say, for IT infrastructure, or if that's the campus level responsibility.
Right. Yeah, that's a great opening, because one of my very first experiences was going to Dean's Council. And that there's an opportunity there to learn what the deans are thinking about. And that's where the questions came up around data services and knowing that that's a campus-wide issue that hasn't been maybe addressed to the extent that they would find completely helpful. And I think everybody recognizes that it's not something that one unit, either Chief Information Officer or the libraries or the Vice Chancellor for Research can do on their own, that it's really a shared responsibility. So a lot of these new areas, digital scholarship, open educational resources, scholarly communications, data management and research data access. And I think in some ways they're kind of new, but they're kind of not at the same time. Those are the things that they have questions, that campus has questions about for us, and want to know how we're providing leadership. And leadership doesn't necessarily mean taking it over. What it means is leading conversations and being in partnership with the other people on campus who are also play a role in that area. And so I think about that, and I think that's how we should be thinking about these areas within the libraries. Not only do we need to make sure we're hiring and bringing in the skills to deal with those issues, those opportunities, but I think we also need to be working in partnership with each other and across divisions and departments to make sure those services. So we should be turning the question around to what does campus need, what do our users need, and then figuring out how to provide those services in the libraries, regardless of what the team looks like or who the people are. And that can be challenging in these new areas. And one of the conversations that I'm finding is I'm trying to figure out where things are in the organization. So when I ask something like, okay, which division does OER, all the AULs raise their hands and say, well, each one of us have something. And so what that tells me is you guys are working really well in a matrix space, but that leads to like clarification about which division, which librarian, which department gets the question, has to go to the meeting, is the point person for partnership, answers the question from the vice provost. Same thing is sort of actually with facilities around here, I found out, is that facilities is kind of a shared responsibility in some ways, in ways that I'm not used to. And so when I ask who does this, it's like the answer changes depending on the subtlety of the question. So I think that's how I think about some of these areas of critical service is we do have strengths in traditional areas. those of us with strengths in traditional areas, special collections, area studies, and science, librarianship, all those spaces need to be continually updating our knowledge in these spaces enough to be able to know when to ask the right question, know when to bring in the appropriate partner, and know who to bring in as an appropriate partner. So we're all kind of jacks of all trades in some way, but we don't have to have deep expertise in those spaces. We just need to know who to call on and who to work with. And then, so we do that in the library, but then we also need to do that outwardly on campus, because again, the library can't do everything. So it's not just about us having the expertise, but us knowing how to pull the right person from do it, the right person from research, the right person from continuing studies, the right person from teaching and learning. So that's how I think about it. And it's very loosey-goosey, kind of ambiguous. But librarians are very resourceful people. You guys are actually really wonderfully resourceful people. And you've done a really great job, frankly, of identifying user needs and then as teams kind of trying to tackle those user needs. And so I'm looking forward to learning more about the opportunities in that space. We have a lot of committees. So. Oh, Ian's giving me a 5-minute warning. Oh, or question. 10 minutes. All right, great. Yeah, I can't count. What's that?
Hi, I'm Jax, Grants and Public Services Librarian at Memorial Library. And part of my role as the Grants Librarian is helping to develop grant writing opportunities to bring in funding for the libraries. This is something historically we've not been very strong in. And another thing I've noticed within this relatively new role for me is, again, a very lack of centralization in grant writing efforts and fundraising efforts in general. I know that development is one of your backgrounds, so I am curious about what your vision is for development and grant writing for the libraries.
Thanks. Yeah. So development is in my background. So first of all, let me talk about grants. So I think many libraries don't take enough advantage of granting opportunities that are out there. One of the challenges with grant writing is that for most of our funders, external granting foundational funders, you need to show a certain level of ability in infrastructure. So you need to have the right experts, and you need to have the right technical infrastructure, and you need to have the right service infrastructure to actually be a viable candidate for the grant that you're requesting. But on the other hand, quite often what our needs are is for building out that infrastructure. And so finding the right project that matches up with the right opportunity is really a challenge. And quite often, especially in libraries this size, it's faster to just figure out how to get the resources ourselves than it is to go out and ask, because then you have to write the proposal, which takes a lot of time, and then you have to wait. And by the time you get a yes or no, you've already moved on to providing that service. So I think that's a lot of the challenge with grants, but that shouldn't hold us back from asking, do we have opportunities, and having folks talk to you about their ideas. Now, what we might find as the ideas come up is the ideas have to shift a little because grants often require matches or infrastructure we don't have. And so sometimes the ideas mutate a little bit over time, and so the original project that we've designed and thought about ends up being a different project altogether. And we always have to ask ourselves, is it really worth it, or should we just try to figure out how to get it done ourselves? And there are other reasons for applying for grants or foundation funding than just we need the money. Sometimes it's about partnering externally. So there's another library who's doing something that we want to do, and we want to, pick up where they left off or share an innovation, and that might be a reason to do a grant. And then the other thing too is sometimes if you're trying to build towards a bigger grant, you might start out with a little grant. So there are lots of different strategies to doing grants and other foundation funding. So development, as you said, is part of my background. Development's not unlike grant writing in the sense that you have to identify what you need money for, and then you have to match it to a donor who's interested. And quite often the donor's interest and the library's need don't quite match up, because just like our everybody everywhere, not everybody understands what libraries do now. And folks think we do one thing, And that's what they want to give us money for. And then when you try to tell them, no, we're already doing that quite well, what we need to do is this more innovative thing. Like, oh no, I'm not really interested in, yeah. And other parts of library work are not as exciting, right? So storage facilities, for example, are hard to fund because people don't really get excited. Some people do get excited about storage, but not every donor is like really excited about compact shelving and temperature and humidity control and a big warehouse off where nobody can see it. So that's some of the challenge. But what I love about development is the opportunity to be able to articulate where the library is going, what our future possibilities are, and what needs we have to pursue those opportunities. And then sort of match those up with donor interests, but then also sort of bring them along on our vision and say to them, you know, library, what's going on in the library today is really cool, and you can be a part of that too. And that's the best part, I think, of development work. And you get, you know, I think that if you talk to Ben and other people, you get turned down a lot, and that's okay. And these relationships are really long, so you spend many, many years talking, you know, building a relationship and talking to people. And the ideas change. You think you're fundraising for preservation, let's say. And before the relationships ended, you end up with, you know, teaching and learning resources somehow. And, you know, how did that happen? We thought it was about preservation. So yeah, it's complicated, but I think it's fun. Well, and I should say that so development isn't a one-person job or two-person job. It's not just me and Ben running off to talk to donors. I will be calling on all of you to help me out with information about your programs, about your needs that I can take to donors. And when donors ask me, so what are we doing about the cost of journals? And that thing that happened in Europe, are you guys going to do it too? I'm going to need background information, right, from you guys about what we're doing and how successful it is and what our faculty response has been, so I can take that with me out into the field and talk to donors about our successes. So it's a group effort.
Hi, Andrew with Conservation. I'll just kind of tie together a few things that have just been said. I know you also have background in area studies and knowing the condition of many area studies materials. I'm wondering how you've interacted with preservation in your previous positions, and also in terms of funding, grant writing, development, and so forth. Have there been any specific strategies?
Yeah, so remind me if I don't get to all parts of that question. So I started out my life, library professional life as an audiovisual archivist. So my job was to preserve audiovisual materials and do reference, by the way. And most of my job is actually the reference part, answering the phone. But so I've been working with preservation for quite some time, and I've actually had different experience with three kinds of different experience with preservation so far. So at the University of Kentucky, we had a very, they were building a new library, they got a new preservation lab, they hired a conservator, and so I got very familiar with sort of the traditional research library preservation environment. But then we started asking questions about digital preservation and digital preservation of reformatted audiovisual materials, and how to put that into an organization. So whether that belongs to preservation, whether that belongs to digital libraries, that's sort of the thing we were talking about way back a long time ago at UK. And they had a strong microfilming program that ended up turning into a strength in digitizing. So we had a really strong digitizing newspapers project. And then it went from there, which was pretty robust. I mean, they thought they could use more staff. They probably could have used more staff, but in general, it's pretty robust. To NC State, where the preservation practice was actually a lot lighter weight because it was less well-staffed. And the work there was focusing primarily on keeping the collections usable. So it was very much, the energy was not, we had time in special collections from preservation, but it was very carefully it was very carefully weighed against the needs of the general collection and all the things that come along with the general collection there. So getting materials ready to go into storage, stabilizing, circulating collections, that sort of thing. And so a lot of it was stabilization more, and we did digitizing of those collections too, but that generally happened in digital libraries rather than in preservation. And then at Ohio State, they were in a situation where they had a beautiful conservation lab at off-site, so at a distance from the main library where special collections were stored. And so a lot of our conversation, and even more robustly staffed than my previous experience had been. But what it meant was we were always in conversations about transporting collections, the security of those collections, both in transportation and off-site when they were in the conservation lab, the temperature and humidity conditions at the conservation lab and in their storage room, that sort of thing. So it sort of has a wide variety of conversations about preservation. And I think that it's really critical to think about preservation in the life cycle of materials. You know, one of our primary roles is as stewards of our, long-term stewards of our collections and our materials. And what that means is preservation has to be woven in as part of the cycle and part of the workflow. And so that might mean we're working, I assume you guys are working closely with metadata and cataloging, who might be in circulation, who might be flagging materials and sending them off to preservation for attention. Also with people who are identifying things to be digitized, and they're sending things off to preservation. I'm not quite sure how much preservation here is doing digitization and reformatting, but you guys might have a role in that too. And so I think it's very much, it's sort of that integrated teamwork environment that I'm sort of just talking about, which is, while we might have a designated preservation staff, it's sort of everybody's, part of everybody's job too. And I think that that's a really valuable way to approach stewardship of our collections. And then I think also our preservation folks have a good input on, so a faculty member wants to use something for a class, should they use a facsimile or should they use the original? Something needs to go on exhibit, should it be, you know, housed behind glass, or is it something that people can touch? As we're trying to leverage our collections and as they're used, I find sometimes that you're doing reference interviews about, so preservation folks, preservation-oriented folks, are actually doing reference interviews with faculty and the curators, trying to decide how's this thing going to get used and how can we provide long-term stability for the short-term leveraging of those collections.
Okay, time in order to get you to your next meeting.
Thank you for being conscious of that, and my apologies for having to run off.
Thanks for coming over and answering questions, and thanks to everyone for questions. We're just going to switch over to this. Thank you, Lisa.
I should just say that I hope this isn't the last time we'll do this. So hopefully I'll be back up in front of you all again with more questions and answers.
That would be great.
Thanks.
Okay, now we're going to turn it over to Heather Schindler, who's going to give us updates for CASI and for professional concerns.
See if I can get this on. It's working. Okay, so I'm just going to go pretty quickly. I have a ton of stuff to say, but I'm going to be chairing the Professional Concerns Committee. Here's our charge. There are current members. So we have 2 people leave the committee, so we're looking for 1 or 2 people to sign up. So I did bring a sign-up sheet for today. If anyone here is interested in signing up, you can see we do listening sessions. We might bring in speakers. Past committees have created a report for exec on concerns that staff are having. And you can see kind of the list of concerns that we've addressed in the past. So if people are interested in joining this committee, I've got the sign-up sheet, and I will also send out an email to all staff for people who weren't
at this meeting. So I'll put this on the table over there. So there's that with professional concerns. And so we're going to fill the committee, and then we'll start meeting in October. We'll probably do, depending on who's on the committee, maybe do a meeting once a month, and then try to have a few listening sessions during each semester. So that's kind of the workload I'm foreseeing for the committee, but that can change depending on who's on the committee. Any questions about that? I didn't really talk. Seems pretty straightforward. And then I want to talk a little bit about my role as the CASI rep. So as Deb Shapiro said before, Librarians Assembly is a CASI inside of the larger shared governance on campus. So as you can see, the CASI part of it, so Librarians Assembly is the CASI for the libraries. Every school has their own CASI. Usually they're just called CASI. So Librarians Assembly is kind of unique. I think Librarians Assembly was created before all the other CASIs were created, so it had the name, and then everybody else is just called CASI. So I just want to do a quick refresher on what the CASIs are. We represent academic staff and advocate for academic staff inside of the shared governance on campus. And the show is kind of small, but kind of the overview of the shared governance on campus and how it goes. Student governance, university staff, administration, faculty governance, and then we're in academic staff governance, and we've got academic staff assembly, the executive committee, that's ASIC, which Deb is our representative for that, and then I am the representative for the committees on academic staff issues, which is the CASI, and then we're all kind of represented by ASPRO. So this chart is also on the Librarians Assembly website, and we'll work to make sure that sort of guiding documents like this to answer questions, especially for new people or for people who've never been interested in shared governance, can kind of have a better idea of what shared governance looks like for library staff. And then I just wanted to point out 2 emails. So as a CASI rep, I'm going to go meet with other CASI reps, and we're going to talk about what the other CASIs are doing, and I can bring that information back to you and talk about that at the Librarians Assembly business meetings. And then also I send our business meeting agendas to the other CASIs so they can see what we're doing. Or actually to our to Heather Daniels, the secretary of academic staff. So I wanted to point out 2 emails that went out recently that maybe people might have missed. And one is that there is, so this one went out September 7th, and that everyone's invited to the UW Madison Shared Governance reception. So look for this email. I think if you're interested in shared governance, it'd be a great place to go. And the chancellor will be there. So it's open to everybody. And then just one last thing, one last email that went out was for the mentoring program. And you can see that went out yesterday. So this is another program that could be really good for people who want to mentor other staff or are looking for a mentor. So I wanted to point out these 2 emails. Any questions about the CASI or about Professional Concerns Committee? That's all I have.
Yeah, I just figured. Okay, next up on the agenda, Pamela is going to give a treasury update. I believe there are slides involved.
There are always visuals. So this is what we spent last year. You can see that I think we were pretty conscientious about your membership monies, especially this LA Business one, in which a lot of steering committee members donated food for business meetings, or they just never got me the receipts. So, and feel free to make sure that you send me something. We are pretty consistent with our spending over the last 3 years. We had a big jump for the high tea, but I think you all agree that it was a much better reception for the effort. So our projected budget last year was that we would spend $1105.93. We spent less, $125 to the good. This is our projected budget, and this is the first time any of the steering committee members are seeing this. So IT, this is a 10% increase over our last year's expenditures. This is kind of our operating budget. I'm looking at Beth and Amy. E-Talk Run, which also includes library lunches. The LA Business Meeting, I bumped it up quite a bit because I'm hoping that receipts will actually come in. And then book sharing. So our total budget for this year is very close to last year's, $1103.50. The income from dues and donations, this is the breakdown. We had quite a nice turnout for the high tea, so it came to $1275. At one point, for the last few years, we've had about $59 in savings, and just about drove me insane. So I added $40.96, and now we have a nice round number of $100 in savings. And you'll be happy to know that when I tried to add it to my own checking account through UW Credit Union, they said I couldn't get that. So your money is safe. It can only be used for Librarians Assembly efforts. So we have $100 in savings, $1591.88 in checking, which I think is a pretty good budget. So we should have about $400 to work with this year if everybody stays on budget. Any questions about the monies for Librarians Assembly and what your dues are going for? The fiscal year for the Treasury, set up by Peggy, our last treasurer, is 9/30. So you can pay your dues at any time. Of course, most people seem to pay them at the high tea time. But just know that if you have any questions or if you want to send me money, I'm happy to take it. So thank you.
Next up, Beth or Amy, are you going to give the update then for a programming update?
Hi. Just very briefly here. I guess there's only one slide, so that will eventually go away. There we go. Okay, so just to let you know, some of you are already familiar with the E-Talk Run program series. Let me just back up for a second. The programming committee currently has 2 members, and we definitely would welcome additional members to help organize programs, to seek speakers, to work on programming. So up in the right-hand corner, we now have an email address, la-programs@library.wix.edu, or you could contact myself or Beth Harper any way that works for you. So we have tentative dates for the E-Talk Run series. This is a program series that has generally 3 speakers who each talk about 15 minutes on some particular either an interest of theirs related to productivity, their personal interest, their other life that they lead, something interesting for other staff. And so we're regularly looking for individuals who might be interested in sharing some information with their colleagues. We have tentative dates Friday, October 19th from 8:30 to 9:30, and Friday, November 16th from noon until 1 o'clock. There is generally some tea or some snacks or refreshments that are offered during the programming. So more information will come up. And again, we're still looking for speakers for those. We also, in the past, we've had a Librarians Assembly book sharing program that's in December. We can look forward to that. We will also need assistants and volunteers to help out with that. In the past, we've also done a librarian's lunch. This will probably happen in the spring semester, where there are a couple of different occasions where we get together and you get to meet your colleagues across campus, very informal type setting. Of course, the program committee also works on the high tea, which is a library staff recognition program and essentially a celebration for a job well done during the academic year. And then there's also finally a shout out program that was, I think it was just last year that you started up that was, I think, emulated based on the college library has a similar program. And so from the Librarians Assembly, website. There's a web form for shout-outs if you would like to recognize the work of an individual or a committee or group or something that you think, hey, you'd like to share that with your other colleagues. And we will publicize that and announce that both on the website as well as in future business meetings. So that's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, and finally, and I think we're just about out of time, so this is great. As I mentioned at the beginning, we are short a member now that Paloma is in the process of leaving. And in the bylaws, it turns out that we actually have to have 5 or 7 members, and right now we're down to 6. So help us not break the law and volunteer to be a new member on the steering committee. And if we have to, we'll have a special election, but maybe just one of you will volunteer and we won't have to do that. But please put your names forward. I'll be sending an email out and we'll be taking names, and please do volunteer for this opportunity. And with that, I think we can convene. Thank you. Thanks everyone for coming and for participating in the Q&A.
If you're wondering what those books are, if you come into the room, books from Paloma, some of these